How's it going? And welcome to episode 177 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter at On the Wire Pod. I am Adam Howe. You can follow me at 8th grade. That's all spelled out. Kevin Hastings can be followed at Hastings Kevin. Got a great show lined up for you today, and once again, it's going to be continuous for here on out. Have our nice fancy background, and we are live on YouTube as well. So find us on YouTube. I'll make sure to put the link in the show description. So if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, you can find a link there. You can bookmark us, subscribe to us, what have you. Unfortunately, we do not have the fancy blue check mark on the Twitter machine, so we won't be streaming there at the moment. But we will, maybe someday. We'll see. But Kevin, we're back at it. We're doing this a little early. For those watching, but for those listening, you'll find out. It is Thursday night, so lots still could happen between now and the Faab period. Some scheduling issues, and so this is the best we got. But it'd be nice because we'll be able to start talking about the things we've seen, and then we'll be looking for throughout the weekend, so you can compare those verbal notes to what you actually saw over the weekend, Kevin. But short week so far. How's it treating you? How you doing?
Oh, doing great, Adam. Thank you so much. Hope you're doing well. It's it's been a fun week. Just hanging in there in a couple of spots. I have some teams that are out of it. I'm still fighting. I do not want to finish double digits in any league.
Sure.
So I'm still fighting there. Several that are mid pack and a couple close to the top, and fortunately that's my bigger leagues. So
There you go.
really turning the grind on for these last 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, I mean you have to, especially in the roto leagues as well. I do scatter in a couple of head-to-head leagues as well, and those are fun when a good majority of your roto leagues are hurting, right? Because if in a head-to-head league, it's like you play weekly, and so
Yep.
like even if you are the bottom of your standings, you're at least fighting that week, throughout. And you can do side bets, you can do just for pride and just be like, oh, I don't want to get swept this year by this guy and whatever. I've already played him two
One of
times.
my head-to-head leagues, the teams that don't make the playoffs, they're in their own playoff, and that's for the number one draft pick, and that's a dynasty league, so it's a big deal. So
See,
everybody really has to keep playing.
we thought about doing something like that in our dynasty league, but you couldn't. It was hard to justify giving the quote best worst team the best draft pick as opposed to just
Mm,
giving it to the bottom. But I do like the idea of doing that because it does stop tanking, at least in the
to the
bottom.
extreme.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
the to the absolute extreme. The issue I think would run into is that 7 seed in a 12-team league, that 7 or 8 seed would continue, like who just missed the playoffs. They're just that one piece away. They would end up with the top draft pick every year, and then that 11, 12 team would just, I don't know, they'd get so frustrated that they just quit, and then I have to turn over
Yeah,
that
I
roster.
had that pick 2 years in a row, the past 2 years,
Yeah,
for winning that second level playoff,
the
for
NIT of your,
lack
yeah.
of a better name, and now I have a good shot at a buy this year, so
There you go.
it does work out that way.
All right. Well, it's not a dynasty show, not a head-to-head focus show either, though. Of course,
It's still
Fab.
fun.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's get into some news and notes that we've seen so far. Of course, we can't see into the future, so there's going to be plenty of news and notes to talk about come Sunday that are going to affect it. But we got plenty actually already, and it's already Thursday's not even over yet. There's still games playing. So still lots to happen. Let's talk about a couple debuts that we've either seen or have been announced. And by the time you're listening to this, you would have seen them all, I'm sure. Start with the one that we kind of alluded to a little bit on the last show, that as a possibility in Minnesota, they do end up calling. Louis Varland did start that other game, and we were wondering who
Mhm.
was going to come up and start in the place of Joe Ryan. Lo and behold, it was Zebby Matthews. They made a spot for him on the 40-man, called him up. He makes his debut. Louis Varland has since been sent down by the Twins. So, are we thinking Zebby Matthews is going to stay? They don't have an obvious, as we talked about last week, Kevin, they don't have another obvious answer here. So, unless they're just going to kind of go back and forth between Matthews and Varland, up and down, um, I mean, that's obviously something they could do every 15 days. But do we think Matthews has some holdings power here worthy of decent, percentage of Faab bids for this weekend?
It sure appears so, and his start this week did come against the Royals, so I was watching that game, and it sure sounded like the Royals announcers and everybody interviewed from the Twins expect him to stick around, and if so, we're looking at a two-step this week, which is going to make the prices even more expensive. I'd be slightly concerned. I mean, he looked really good. The stat line looked good, but watching him, he looked really good. And so that at San Diego, slightly concerning first major league road game. San Diego's been a pretty darn good offense of late, but then he gets St. Louis as well. So if I am fortunate enough to acquire him Sunday evening, I'll definitely put him in my lineups this week.
Yeah, it was an interesting debut. As you said, he looked good. I'm trying to pull up. You want to make sure you're looking at this. You got to keep in mind, of course, this is a major league debut. Things change. Control, obviously, in your rookie season, whether you come up in August or in May, can always be an issue. So they'll see if he continues to, kind of go, go on going on throughout the rest of the season. But if he, the control look, what I'm trying to say is the control looked good in,
Right,
for
which looked
especially
really
for a
good
major
in the
league debut.
minors all year long, and then yeah, 0 walks is we love to see it.
Yeah. Another debut, not a major league debut, but more of a 2025 debut, was Matthew Boyd. Boyd Boys Unite, all that good stuff. He debuted for the Guardians this time. He had looked amazing ultimately in his rehab starts leading up to this debut. And he didn't look bad in his actual debut either. So um I do not foresee there being an issue with him being sent down at this point. He's up. He's not as though the Guardians are going to send him down, so that's not a concern. But are you concerned at all with, is this a one and done? I mean, I have Robbie Ray issues in my head right now with that first inning when he first came back, he was awful, but then he cruised through the next four innings, right? And now we all kind of saw what he did last week. And to be fair, he just had no control in that first inning. Robbie Ray, that is. And then
Right.
Michael Harris, of course, beautiful first day back, first at bat back. I think it was 0-2-0-1 pitch too. It's like second pitch he saw, grand slam Montgomery Cove. So that was nice for him. Not so nice for Robbie Ray, who couldn't even last through the entire first inning. Not to say that he will, if he can find any semblance of control, I'm not worried about it. All right, that's Robbie Ray. Matthew Boyd, what's your overall thoughts on him for the rest of the season? Can he hold on to this momentum, or do you think that this might have been the outlier for the rest of 2025? Four.
You know, with the starts coming up this week, the first one in particular at the New York Yankees, I would typically be really concerned. However, as good as he had looked, as we talked last week, and you brought it up again earlier, how good Matthew Boyd had looked for over a month as he was building up in the minors. He looked amazing to come out and only give up 3 hits, 1 run, 0 walks once again, 6 strikeouts in 5 and a third against the Cubs. Hard to know, hard to judge a start when it's against the Cubs. The Cubs can be really good offense some days and look absolutely horrendous others. So it's hard to judge on that. But for if it was just the Yankees this week, I would probably sit Boyd as good as he has looked. But I think he's looked good enough that I'm not gonna run away from this Yankees start in order to get the one versus Texas back at home in Cleveland over the weekend. I think I would run him out there for this two-step.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's coming back, now he's eligible, and of course he gets a two-step, um, is kinda nice because if nothing else, all the attention can possibly be on him, especially since he did so well in that debut, and he's got the two-step. Maybe you can sneak in some Zebby Matthew bids in there,
Yep,
on the
and
side.
vice versa, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They both get 2 steps the first weekend they're available.
Sure. Yeah. As long, assuming Matthews is up for both starts, which I also assume he will be. Other debuts that were announced that I saw come through today, don't know if they actually made their debut today or if they're slated for Friday. The Detroit Tigers call up Trey Sweeney, who was part of the Jack Flaherty deal, and then their other prospect, Jace Young, debuting as well for them. So making a lot of moves on that side of the ball for these guys. Can I mean it? I think it's a lot easier to discern whether or not a pitcher call up in August is going to be impactful for your teams as opposed to the hitter ones because we've seen so many hitters come up and we'll talk about one in a second. Kobe Mayo already getting sent back down or not getting the playing time that we might have expected based on their team structure or their prospect pedigree or their history, their production in the minors. Hurts and Kierstead obviously is the most obvious one that comes to mind there, also on the Orioles. So can we trust that either one of these guys are going to be consistently productive for the Tigers moving forward? Or is this, let's see what you got for 2 weeks, and then maybe we'll send you down by the end of the month?
I don't know. Detroit's in a position where they might just roll Young out there, Chase Young, the rest of the season. And I'm really curious to see if the plate discipline can carry over to the major league level. If it can, we'll probably see a few home runs and some runs and RBI out of him with a halfway decent batting average. Now he has 14 home runs on the season at AAA and a little over 400 plate appearances, hitting 257, but a 377 OBP because he's walking over 16% of the time. He's at a double digit walk rate his entire professional career, and his strikeout rates have not been bad. It did spike to 26.8% in 209 plate appearances at double A last season. But between high A and double A, last season, almost 600 plate appearances, 575 plate appearances between the two levels, 28 home runs, 5 stolen bases. Uh, he only has 2 stolen bases above high A, so I'm not counting on any of those stolen bases. But if he can continue to show that plate discipline and hit the ball with authority when he does make contact, there might be something here. Projections have him hitting in the 220s when he first comes up. And that's fair because they have him at a 27-28% strikeout rate, up from a little above that spike he had at double A in 2023, but he's really improved on that this season. 22.4% in those little over 400 plate appearances at triple A. So if he can keep that down 25-26%, there might be something here. I'm definitely considering him on Sunday.
Yeah, I just also interesting that they make this move with two guys that with Sweeney being a first rounder and Jace Young being a touted prospect across different fantasy circles. That they make this move pretty much on the same day at the same time. Is just interesting. Like, how are these guys going to fit in together? And are they both going to fit in together, or is it going to be a fight? I mean, obviously they're playing different positions, and they'll both have opportunities to be in the lineup. I guess I just wonder how it'll work out. But then that's the lovely part about doing this recording on a Thursday. We got a whole weekend to figure that out. By the time we're talking, as we're talking
Right.
about it now, by the time you're listening to this, you'll have a better idea of at least what the Tigers are doing there. I mentioned this just a second ago. Kobe Mayo, there was a joke or semi joke in the I don't know if it was a joke or not, but in the PL Discord, Pitcher List Discord, sign up for PL Pro, PL Plus, and get in there, and it's a good time. But that Kobe Mayo got his first hit, and so of course now it's time for the Orioles to send him back down, and lo and behold, they literally did. So I don't know if they had any inside information or not, but it was bad timing. And so is the question here? The question here is just: are the Orioles doing this because it was always the plan? We say all the whole time, like I just assumed Mayo wasn't going to be called up until the end of August, so that he could stay under the 140 mark. So he, 140 at bats, and 40 days, 40 days on the roster, is to keep rookie eligibility for 2025, and thus be eligible for rookie of the year possibly for 2025. They can, by sending him back down, obviously he can stay within those parameters, even if called back up, say at the beginning of September. He was only up for about a week or a week and a half, and so easy to do that. Do you expect Mayo to be back up, say, top of September, right, on August 31st, maybe making him eligible for playoffs as well?
I'm not so sure, and this is why. And I'm going to talk about this quite a bit throughout the show. Baltimore's schedule next week looks to line up versus 5 left-handed starting pitchers out of 7 games. I would think they would have if they would have given him a shot versus all those lefties, because they can't bring him up that quickly. They can't bring him back unless there's an injury.
Sure.
They could. If they have an injury this weekend, they could bring him back. But I would think they would want to see that, and this was a time manipulation thing of still getting another year of control if they leave him down long enough, and then bring him back in September. I would have thought they would have tried to use him next week. That's the only thing I'm seeing, but otherwise, that is what I would think, and I do think we'll see him again before the end of the season, but maybe not quite as quickly as some of us would like. Um, otherwise, I think they would have left him up for the one more week.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Part of me, it's like, I know this has absolutely nothing to do with decision making, when it comes down to this, but we don't remember that the AAA and the minor league playoffs happen a lot earlier,
Yeah.
than Major League Baseball, and there's a market there. There's a market there. Norfolk Tide could probably use Kobe Mayo, some for more of those. What was it, like 20 some odd run games that they were having at the beginning of the year? And I'm just double checking where they might be sitting in their standings. They're not. They might not. They're probably not making the playoffs. To be honest, so there's a possibility that that's not a concern anyway. Even with that offense, they're sitting under 500 and sitting at about seventh or eighth place in the International League East. So maybe not not a concern here. Um, so we'll see. Like you said, they got to wait 15 days unless there's an injury, at the very least. So we'll see if he gets another cup of coffee in September at least, just to like get him a little bit more of a taste. I would expect him to be back up sometime in September, even if it's not going to be playoff bound, whether it's, after the playoffs start and then they're not in it or something like that. And then also giving their other starters a rest if they have any kind of a buffer, whether it's in the division, which they don't really have a big buffer in the division. So they might be fighting the Yankees for that, or in the, in their wild card spot as it stands right now.
The other
Uh,
side of that, that kind of contradicts what I said about the upcoming schedule is recently they've been playing Ramon Urias against right-handed starting pitching and or left-handed starting pitching, excuse me. And so and righties, but mostly lefties. And in spite of him not being nearly as good at the plate this season as he was at times last season, when I got excited about him week in and week out here on the show, he does have a 105 WRC plus versus lefties. So maybe it was like, oh, we're playing Ramon Urias next week. Why are we going to have Kobe Mayo here sitting on our bench
yeah,
eating up service time?
fair enough. No, not much to talk about here. Just want to make sure everybody's aware in case they didn't see it. I'm sure you did. Christian Yelich, he did elect to have back surgery. He will miss the remainder of the 2024 season. When he was first kind of hurt, he was kind of saying he didn't, probably wasn't going to have the surgery until the off season, where it was on the table. But lo and behold, he is having the back surgery now to, give him more time to recover for 2025. So if you haven't already, go ahead and drop Christian Yelich for the 2024 season. And a couple other injuries of note to go over, and we will go over those in just a moment after this break. All right. Unfortunately, of course, we do have injuries to talk about, Kevin. Let's talk about the Yankees' big acquisition at the trade deadline. Of course, I'm talking about Jazz Chisholm Jr. He hits the IL with an elbow sprain, UCL injury. Regardless if you're a pitcher or hitter, you never want to see it. He does hit the IL officially. The Yankees are trying to figure out what he's going to have to do as of our recording. They have not made a final decision. They are crossing their fingers, hoping that it can be a rest and relaxation type of rehab, and he'll be ready to go before the playoffs were to arrive, or at least hopefully by mid-September. But actual necessary surgeries are not completely off the table from everything I've seen so far. So I mean, what are you doing with Jazz here? Even if he is doing a rest and rehab type of situation, and he's going to be back in mid to late September. Is this worth your time holding on to?
Probably not. I mean, if you're very fortunate, you have no injuries, you have all your coverage in your leagues for whether regardless of format. We typically talk NFBC, so I'm always big about having replacements on Friday. But if you have guys, I guess you could try to hold on for another week or two and see if we get more news. But I think in most cases, even if we would get a week or two out of him, it's not enough to justify holding on to him for the 4 weeks leading up to that.
Sure. And then with, he hadn't been with the team that long, but he's done plenty to make a mark and, cement himself in that lineup. What are the Yankees doing or going to do during this at least extended absence from, everything you've seen so far? And obviously we still have a weekend to kind of see their reactions here as well.
I would be shocked if we don't see Jason Dominguez soon. They traded for Jazz because for Verdugo's just not doing much out there. And the team had a spark when Jazz come up. I don't think they want to see what happens with everything going back to exactly as it was before he got there. I think we're going to see Jason Dominguez very soon, probably by the end of the month.
Yeah, I mean they did. They brought back Cabrera, Oswaldo Cabrera, as well. So filling in at third base there, which has had spent a little bit of time as well. And the whole Dominguez thing is funny because I'm going to go back to this whole Rookie of the Year eligibility thing. He still
Oh,
has
yeah, how
rookie
many
eligibility.
professional at bats does he have? That's what I'm gonna look at real quick.
Yeah, go for it. But it's enough where if they wait long enough to call him up, like this year, it's not, late August. It might be like early September still.
Right.
But he could still, be eligible on the playoff roster and keep his rookie eligibility for 2025.
Right, he's got 31 at bats, so he has to get less than 99 at bats the rest of this season. So that
That's
is
like 30 games.
it,
Yeah.
that's the date we'll see him. Yep.
Yep. I mean, that's 30 games. I mean, so again, we'll see end of August, still eligible for the playoff roster before September 1st. Takes enough walks,
Sit
it
him
won't
a couple
matter.
of games to get the
How
at
many
bats don't get
how
there.
many days, how many games did he play in those 30 some odd bats? Because that'll, you can estimate how many days he was on the
Oh, I
major
thought
league
it was
roster.
days. Yeah.
Yeah, it is days. I'm
Um,
just
yep, I got you. I see what you're saying.
add a
I
couple
lost
to
it.
that number.
He played 8 games at the
8.
major league
So he
level.
probably was on the roster for like 12, 13 days with off
Yep, and I
days and
think you
what
get
have you.
45.
Yeah.
So, as long as they can it's over 30, so they can get him before September 1st, right? So he's playoff eligible, which it
So,
appears that's the
which
case.
would be insane. The fact that
Yep.
he, rookie eligible 3 years later, and then we'll see how that works out. It'd be interesting. All right, another IL stint. shocking, I know. Byron Buxton, who's actually been the Twins have done a really good job of keeping him healthy, giving him enough off days. He's still doing his thing out in the out. He's still running into walls. He's still doing things to get himself injured. He's just gotten, knock on wood, pretty lucky till most recently did injure his hip running into the wall. And it was hoping it was going to be a day-to-day thing, is officially gone on the IL, hoping to be the minimum stint here with 10 days. But had been producing mostly while healthy as well, which we tend to say about Byron Buxton all the time. As long as he's healthy, he will produce. Not MVP status that he once was thought, but still, productive. Not going to be, hopefully, not going to be extended out the way that Jazz is expected to be out. But is this still at a point of the season where we're dropping somebody like Buxton, especially if you need any kind of flexibility for the last couple weeks?
If you need the flexibility, yes. If you can hang on, I think I would try. 275 batting average with 16 home runs and 6 stolen bases in a little over 300 plate appearances. Really nice runs and RBI numbers for that limited number of at bats. It's only 90 games, and he has 54 runs and 49 RBI on the season. And the Twins are looking really good. Another team, I saw them quite well, not another team, same team. Saw them quite a bit this week playing the Royals. That team looks locked in. This is not a team I want to face in the playoffs if I'm anybody. And if they're going to get Buxton back in the minimum, in fact, I would. This is one of those situations, you bring it up all the time. If he's dropped in leagues this Sunday night, mark those down and be ready for next week, because you'll still get a little over a month out of him.
Yeah, I'm venturing to guess that the early signs of Austin Martin filling in in center field for Buxton, who had been playing pretty much every day at center field, would bode well for him moving forward, at least while Buxton's out in the short term for this coming week.
Absolutely.
Martin playing almost every day already, divided between left field and second base, has the pros to play center field, and could very easily continue with that playing time, if not extend his playing time moving forward as well. So somebody to keep an eye on if you need that extra flexibility in the middle infield or outfield with Austin Martin. It's got some speed, got some options. And if Uncle Ted was in the chat today, he would definitely be echoing what I'm saying, because he mentions him every single week somehow.
He likes Austin Martin, yes.
I was worried about, every time you mentioned it, I'd be like, I'm worried about Austin Martin's playing time. I didn't see it, and it wasn't there at first, but over the last 2-3 weeks, he's pretty much played 5 out of
Yeah,
7,
and now
5
it'll
out of
definitely
6.
be there for at least this next week.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
All right. So, that's the last injury. Wow. Unless more come up, hopefully I won't even look, because I don't want to talk about them. But we do have a return here. Blaze Alexander returns to Arizona, with Alec Thomas being optioned to make room for him. Was this more, in your opinion or thought, is this more Alex Thomas needs a break? He needs to right the ship, and he's the makes sense to option him, or is more Blaze Alexander, we need him in the lineup at this juncture based on the roster construction and production?
Yeah, I was pretty excited about Alec Thomas coming into the season, and then injuries derailed everything. And then since he's come back, I got excited again, and then he just didn't perform. He regressed to what he had been doing, early last season and seasons prior. He just didn't look good. And I really hope it's injury related, and he gets through it, gets things figured out, because I do like him as a player. Unfortunately, it just wasn't performing. So bringing Blaze Alexander back does make sense. Jock Peterson's their designated hitter. They can put him in the outfielder in a pinch. Randall Grichuk can play outfield versus lefties, and does. And we talk about this every week with Minnesota, and Arizona is getting this way as well. When you look at their player page, there's not a lot of guys that play every day.
Mhm.
Um, They shuffle guys in and out. It's kind of funny. It makes sense. One of them's the shortstop, but the two of the three Arizona Diamondbacks that played every day this week are the 8 and 9 hitters. One of
Yeah.
them, the shortstop, Geraldo Perdomo. That makes sense. And then Eugenio Suarez played every day this week, but everybody else gets days off. Lots of guys sit against lefties. Some guys get in there just against lefties, and then another spot start or two against others. And I think that's what we're going to see with Blaze Alexander at first. Now that he's coming back, I think they like Perdomo in that spot. Blaze Alexander played second base on Wednesday when he got the recall. I think they were off on Thursday. And that was versus a righty. So same-handed pitching. So that's a good sign right away that they got him in the lineup right away versus same-handed pitching. But I'm not so sure we're going to see him every day like we did early in the season when we got excited about him a little bit. But it's definitely worth monitoring through the weekend. If he continues to get at bats versus righties, I will expect him to get them versus lefties. And he was probably dropped in most places, so he might be worth re-adding to our teams.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, the Kevin Newman's still on the roster, and he's been pretty much playing only against lefties at second base, sometimes at shortstop, just to fill in. And so expect Blaze Alexander to get those lefty starts, and he's already getting righty starts. There's only one, there's one route for Kevin Newman moving forward, who's been fine. He's been producing. He's as of late. I will add the other two guys that have been playing pretty much every day, include Josh Bell over on the other corner of the infield since he was brought over from Miami, and
Yeah,
the
when they said you need to play in Christian Walker's spot, he thought they meant you are now Christian Walker, and
Walker.
that's what he's done since he got there.
It really has. And then Jake McCarthy obviously going to be taking over center field, or at least it would appear so, with Alec Thomas, who had been.
We have to monitor Ketel Marte's ankle injury, where I
Mhm.
think we're hoping it's just day to day. But if that turns into something, then we're going to see Blaze Alexander in the lineup on a daily basis for sure.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so someone to monitor in Arizona whose offense you do not really want to be streaming against anyway.
Oh,
But
even aces. It's been rough against Arizona a few times recently.
yeah, it's one of those things where we're talking about. You like you just kind of sneak up on you. You realize, oh, that's right,
Yes.
Arizona's a good. All right, last thing here. Ranger Suarez, just as a notice, is lined up to return next week against your Kansas City Royals. If it's, I haven't checked his rostership, but if he's available, are you excited about this opportunity to like again maybe cut into the bids of Zebby Matthews, Matthew Boyd with these other double steps, or is this a pitcher you're just like when he's coming back from rehab starts? I wasn't super excited about him beforehand. Where's your stance here on Suarez, his return next week?
Uh, Unfortunately, he is 100% rostered in both 15s and 12s on the NFBC format. So I was a little disappointed that I missed out on him completely early in the season. I didn't have him rostered anywhere, and unfortunately, that will continue to be the case because he's not available anywhere for me.
Fair enough. All right. Well, if you got him on an IL team, just be ready to bring him back in, or hold on to him in your IL if you want to take. You don't want him going against Kevin's Royals for that still ill. Well, that's all I see. The last thing that came through that we talked about right before I wasn't gonna put it in the notes, but I'll mention it just as a note in case you missed it. Bobby Miller was scratched from his scheduled Triple A start on Thursday evening, and so just that obviously hit a snag in his rehabilitation. It's not even just straight rehab; it's like he was sent down, fixed some stuff, and he isn't fixing stuff at the moment. So Gavin, you mentioned you had already dropped them, and so this is kind of confirmation bias here. But if it should be for nothing, no other reason, if you still have them, if you didn't do what Kevin did last week and drop them, I think it's probably safe to say go ahead and get rid of the dead weight on your roster at this moment, moving forward for 2024. What do you think?
Yeah, when I was dropping him last week, I felt like I had waited too long already. So
Mhm.
so with this news, yeah, I'd definitely be letting him go this week if I hadn't dropped him yet.
Yeah, and unlike Byron Buxton drops, not going to be somebody I like make a note of if somebody in my leagues does drop them.
Unfortunately not. I was super excited about him. I loved my leagues that I drafted early and was getting him, 6th round as opposed to the 4th round he was going by the heart of draft season, and it just did not work out this year.
This will be
Injuries had
one.
a lot to do with it,
This
but
will be
I'll be
one of
back
the.
in next year.
This will be one of the guys where I'm interested to see where he goes in the like the meatball draft and like these
Yep,
early
exactly.
August September DCs that we see. Um,
100%.
get a guy like Bobby Miller in the 40th round because everybody forgot.
Exactly.
Something tells me anybody drafting in one of those drafts did not forget, so I'm not expecting him to go that late. All right. Well, we've got lots of money. No, we do not have lots of money to spend, but we do need to spend it, Kevin. So we're gonna get into some recommendations. We just talked about a whole bunch of news, and the week is barely halfway through. But we didn't hit on everything. Of course, you should be listening to the First Pitch podcast every single day with either Casey Bubba or Jane Crumpler on the weekends. They break down all the news, highlights, and observations from every day's worth of games, as well as looking ahead at each slate to keep you up to date with everything you need to know to win your fantasy leagues. Of course, for everything starting pitching, Nick Pollock has you covered on the Plus Pitch podcast every weekday morning. He highlights every starting pitching performance from the day prior and looking ahead at streaming options for tomorrow's games as well. So make sure you're listening to both those podcasts where you listen to your podcast, where you're listening to us. And soon there will both also be on YouTube as well. So keep an eye out for that as well as all of our podcasts over at the Pitcher List Podcast Network transition into incorporating video as a medium. So, if you like watching us talk and listening to us talk at the same time, you're in luck. We've got you covered. We're going to get you covered in just a minute with some actual recommendations of how to spend what little Fab dollars you may have left. We're going to do that after this break. All right, Kevin, we still got some money to spend. We got to spend it all. We can't take it with us. I don't expect you to spend it all this week, but you got to spend some of it probably to stay competitive. So if we're spending it in the power categories, of course, we're talking home runs, RBIs. If those are the categories that you can make the most difference here, of course, we are definitely penny pinching the categories. We are checking all the lines where we can make the most bang for our buck. Who are you targeting to get you a couple home runs or RBIs or RBI? Excuse me. I know that's a big point of contention with a lot of people. I understand it is RBI. Kevin, yeah, Kevin, are you an RBIs or an RBI?
I have converted to RBI, but I still catch myself adding the S fairly often. But I typically will say RBI.
I will type RBI and I try to say RBI, but I definitely verbalize RBIs. Like it
Yeah.
just comes out a little bit more naturally.
When
Um,
in reality, we should all be saying RSBI, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Capital R, small s. That would look totally normal if I saw that.
Yeah.
All right, who we got here?
Yeah, so first I wanna mention one of the guys I did mention last week, and that's Eloy Jimenez. Still only 93% rostered in 15s only. That's almost universally rostered, but rostered in less than half of 12s. And he hasn't done much this week. He hasn't gotten a lot of plate appearances this week. They were facing right-handed hitters. We know Ryan O'Hearn plays against righties. And so the flip of this is I'm really concerned about all of my Ryan O'Hearn rostership this coming week because Baltimore faces 5 out of 7 left-handed pitching. I fully expect to see Eloy get his first home run or home runs for Baltimore. I think we're going to see him a lot this week, and he's been hitting well. We just haven't seen the home runs yet, and I fully expect to see some. this coming week. The guy that is available almost everywhere, and I'm not chasing the 4 home runs this week. I almost brought him up last week because it is playing time. In fact, I think Todd and I did briefly mention David Peralta a couple of weeks ago in San Diego. Now, we know as soon as Tatis comes back, this playing time is going to dry up. But in the meantime, David Peralta has been performing very well. As I said, 4 home runs this week. 5 out of 7 right-handed pitchers they are set to face this coming week, and so Peralta is there until Tatis comes back. We haven't gotten any news. I haven't seen any news on Tatis in over 2 weeks. July 31st, we were told that we will see Tatis this year, but we don't have a timetable. With no news since then, I do not expect something is going to happen and we're just automatically, miraculously going to see him this coming week. So I would feel confident in adding Peralta in spots where I need an outfielder, decent batting average, and he is showing off a little bit of power over the past few games. He's available everywhere.
He is, and I'm gonna try to do this the best I can. If you're watching us on the
Oh
YouTube,
yes,
we got graphics. We got graphics.
love it.
Yeah, David
It's a
Peralta's
nice one too.
yeah, David Peralta's rolling chart, and I'll try to narrate this for those listening at home as well. Of course, this is our Process Plus rolling chart available for PL Pro members, but you'll get a couple of these on every show, just as a nice little preview. Not a lot of pitches. He's only faced 606 pitches so far, so I did have to bring this down. You know what? I'll bring this down. I'll bring this down even a little bit more just to give it a little bit more granularity, and you'll notice from mid or early August on, it's just like a straight line up, mostly powered by contact. But you'll see, as of recent, as you're mentioning, the power is really coming through in the last couple of pitches, and it's nice to see because that power has been much so. He's still been producing when he's playing, but it's not been driven by power. It's been below average power, kind of dragging it down, especially at this low mark here, right as we turned into August. But through August, it's just he's been making adjustments. He's been doing what he needs to do to bring his contact back up to where it was most of the season. The power is really driving this spike that you're mentioning, and he's making above average decisions, and those all things put together showing good signs. You ride that wave well as long as it's available. As you mentioned, we at least know the wave will keep rolling until Tatis comes back. So I like the call out there. All right, so we got all right, my excuse to use the Process Plus chart here, so I appreciate that one.
Oh, it's perfect.
I wanted to throw Eloy's in there, but Eloy's did not look good at all. And so you mentioned like he hasn't hit his home run. The power is really bringing him down. Even the trade was, he's just not showing life yet. It very well could just be he's due. As simple as that. I don't have a graph for that. I don't have a graph for he's due plus. That Kyle, get on that. Get on that.
I think the fact that they're gonna face 7 left-handed starting pitchers is the he's due graph.
There we go. Yeah, and he hasn't faced any. Maybe that's just I'll look it up later. It's not a big deal. But I couldn't find any. His rolling chart was the same for righties and all, and then nothing would pop up on the lefty thing. So on the lefty slide bar. So yeah, definitely do, especially if he's got that many of them coming up. All right. Power is not the entire name of the game. You can make some room up in the stolen base and runs categories, our speed categories, Kevin. Who is still out there running the bases? And I want to give a shout out to Michael Garcia, who stole 2 bases yesterday for me on my bench because he did not start the game. He is turning into that guy we talk about where he still has value even if he doesn't start. It doesn't help me in my daily leagues, though, where I need to.
It does not.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, happy to see it in the Roto leagues where I have them. But anyway, just start every day. Just keep them. I don't care. Just keep them in the lineup or else. Who else is out there who might actually be available that I can pick up to make up the ground that Garcia left on my bench?
Yeah, I was looking at some projections for next week, and a couple of guys surprised me. They're actually projected for a stolen base plus, like 1.1 or so. One as and they're guys we've talked about. Dyron Blanco is one. We haven't seen much of him recently, but they have him projected this coming week in only 11 at bats in a full week for the Royals. So they're not expecting him to get a lot of starts, but just like you just brought up, they're expecting him to do his thing late in games. Johan Rojas, we've talked about him in this category multiple times throughout the season. He is projected for over a full stolen base as well. One that I really liked, but then pulled away from was Ji-hwan Bae for Pittsburgh. I like it, but they're facing, I believe, 4 lefties, and he doesn't play versus lefties. He may still get in at the end of games. He has been running bases well recently, but just the schedule this week is kind of pushing me away, but I'll definitely look at him again next week. The guy I actually wrote down on the outline is not available in many 15-team leagues, 97% rostered on NFBC main events, but he's only 68% rostered in the 12s, and that's Jake Fraley. And he's back to doing his thing on the base paths when he's in the lineup. So he would probably be the guy I would look for first. Like I said, not a ton of availability. So then I'd kind of like when we talk about our pitching ratios, guys, right? I'd go back to a lot of guys we mentioned over the past few weeks. Johan Rojas, Whit Merrifield has come up a few times. I'm sure he still has availability. But Jake Fraley would be the guy I would hope was available in my league if I'm looking for speed.
Yeah, and Process Plus doesn't do much for the speed category specifically, but I'm going to pull it up here because if you just see what he's doing in general, you're not super impressed, right? This is a pretty below average chart that I'm showing here, with the power really dragging everything down, contact consistently being below average, but it's that decision value that he brings to the table that gets him on base, allowing him the opportunity to run the bases as well. So he's making the right decisions, which can equate to a better on base percentage and opportunities ahead of themselves. So he's not swinging at the wrong pitches. He's spitting on things that he can draw a walk. And when he does make the right decisions, he's more likely to hit the ball into the spot where he can actually get on base. So that's the only reason I like this. I'll bring up Process Plus one more time here while we're still in our hitting categories to realize like there are still values to each one of these individual categories. Process Plus isn't the end all be all here because each one of these things can really bring its own thing to the table. And we're talking about speed. What you care about with speed is they need to be on base so they can actually get the opportunities. You actually
Looking
don't want them hitting home runs. You can't steal any bases if you hit home runs.
right, right. Yeah, and looking at that chart, I don't think it would surprise anybody as they're looking at that when I say he's got a .096 ISO, but he's getting on base over 330.
There you
So
go.
I mean that it perfectly agrees with that, I would say.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So we got some options here on the base pass. Let's see who's got some opportunity ahead of themselves, Kevin. As we look ahead at the schedule, first and foremost, we do have a couple of teams, quite a bit of teams that have a full 7-game slate ahead of them. Baltimore, as you mentioned, 7 games, 5 out of 7 against left-handed pitchers. Tampa Bay, Toronto, Houston, the Angels, Oakland, the Mets, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and San Diego join them as well with 7 games this coming week. Nobody has 2 off days, so everybody else has got 6 games. So that 7-game work week doesn't really give as much of an advantage as it might in other weeks, but still something to consider. Nobody has any weird off days. Everybody's off either Monday or Thursday, as would be expected. We're still looking at Colorado, but I'm always tempted to take this off of the outline there, Kevin. As you mentioned, it doesn't matter.
Actually,
Colorado,
I like that it's on there because I'm more interested
yeah,
in when
is the visiting
Colorado
team.
is away now because I go looking at every single pitcher they're going to face.
There you go. So it's still useful, just in not in the same way that it was intended
Yeah.
originally. But Colorado is away for all 6 of their games, 3 in Washington and 3 in Yankee Stadium. Cincinnati, however, still plays in a ballpark that can beat you up, and they still have an offense that can do some damage. So it's good to know where they're playing. They will be away for all 7 as well. So nobody's playing in any of these these 2 hitter friendly parks. They will have 3 games at Toronto and 4 at Pittsburgh. So with all that in mind and anything else you want to consider, Kevin, who's got a good, who's in a good position? And I mean, I'll echo what we said earlier. Just also keep an eye on Austin Martin's availability, with Byron Buxton being out for at least the next, 15 days. We'll see him probably playing every day in center field for Minnesota. Even if it is in the bottom third of the lineup, he does add some speed options. He can, with enough playing time, can volume his way into relevancy there. So, who talk to me about who you got on here as well for options for opportunity.
I'm going right back to Baltimore and a guy that's not rostered anywhere, at least on the NFBC format, Austin Slater. It's had a bit of a rough season, but we have seen him throughout his career be a guy we want in our lineups. When the Giants at the time were faced in left-handed pitching, he's rewarded us. He's got a 275 career batting average versus lefties and an 800 OPS. Once again, Baltimore, 5 of 7 lefties this week. Since they've acquired him, he's started versus every lefty they've faced, and got a start against a righty or two. But that 5 versus 5 out of 7, he's looking at this schedule too, and he's saying, all right, I'm going to get some regular at bats this week. And I think we'll see good things from Austin Slater. He doesn't steal bases. We've never really seen him do much of that, but we have seen him get on a little hot streak and pop 2 or 3 home runs in a week, and this could very easily be one of those weeks. And even if he doesn't, getting in this Baltimore lineup nearly every day for a week in and of itself is going to be enough for me to be confident that I'll get my runs and RBIs out of him.
I just love the fact that you point that out. It's like, he's looking at the schedule too. He knows what's up. He's gonna pump
Like, this
himself up.
is
He's
my
like, I,
chance.
I, I got some, I can play some games. I get to play some
Yeah.
baseball. Um, yeah, it's an interesting mentality to put yourself in, where you're like, you're already a major league baseball player, but now you have another reason to be excited to go to work because you realize you get to actually go to work. So good on him. Hopefully that you nailed that and exactly how he's feeling and how he's looking at the next week. He's like, my time to shine. I'm in the spotlight.
Yes.
All right. Well, we got some.
Austin Slater and Ramon Urias this
Here
week.
we go. Back to back. If that doesn't happen this week, Eloy, throw some Eloy in there as well for back to back to back. If that happens, man, I don't know. I want to say I'm gonna buy you a car, but I'm like, something good should happen here. We're gonna shine a spotlight here on some pitching categories in just a moment, but of course we got to take another quick break. All right, let's get into these pitching categories. Kevin, wins and Ks, volume our way to where most of the focus is. Most of the teams in your league are probably focusing on these volume categories, so you probably should too. Who we got out there, and kind of in what order? What you're feeling on all these options here for starting pitching that can get us some wins and strikeouts?
I'm going right back to the Rockies on the road versus left-handed pitching like I did last week. It did not work out quite as well as I thought it could have, but it was still really nice. Between Jordan Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez, I think the two pitched 11 innings, 13 strikeouts, 1 win. I think 3 earned runs in 5 innings was the worst of the 2 starts. In many leagues, I was able to get them both fairly inexpensively and run them both out there. So in those cases, I was very happy with those results. Right back to it. Washington going to throw 3 lefties versus Colorado in Washington. DJ Hers, I don't have to talk anybody into starting him versus the Rockies on the road. 95% rostered in main events, only 33% in 12-team online championships. So in those shallower leagues, there's a good chance he's available. Mitchell Parker, same 95% in the 15s, but 72% in 12s. So that's still over a third of leagues, or excuse me, just under a third of leagues, over a quarter of leagues that Mitchell Parker is available in the 12s. Check everywhere. There are those handful of 15s where he's out there. And yes, I am even bringing up Patrick Corbin. Um, I do not suggest this for anybody that cares at all about where their ratios are at right now, whether they're protecting them or trying to gain. But if your ratios are shot and you need strikeouts and the chance of a win, I'd even throw Patrick Corbin against Colorado on the road this week. Bowden Francis has looked really good in his last two appearances, both starts. His most recent two starts, I think he started 3 of the last 4 games he's appeared in. He's 83% rostered in 15s, but only 11% in 12s, and he gets the Angels. I think that's an easy add in 12s if you are looking for wins and Ks this week. And one of those, his last two, he's 12 innings pitched, 3 earned runs combined, 15 Ks, and one of them was against Baltimore. The other versus these Angels that he gets to face again. We talked about Matthew Boyd. He gets at New York and versus Texas. As I said, that New York would probably scare me away if it was the only game this week, but getting the start versus Texas as well. I'm definitely going to bid on him, and I think I'll throw him out there in places where I'm able to acquire him. Michael Lorenzen, available in almost half of 12s, just a handful of 15s. He gets those same Angels. And then I like Cody Bradford this week. He's another one highly rostered in 15s, but available in 2/3 of 12s. And he gets Pittsburgh. He's performed very well in his starts this season, including the starts he had in April, and then now back with the Rangers this week, looking nice again, and he gets Pittsburgh. Those are the main guys I'm going to be looking at least at this point in the week. May add a couple over the weekend, but I like the matchups for all these guys, and most of them have been going pretty well. Not Patrick Corbin, but I love that matchup.
I like you had to quantify that. No, not Patrick Corbin. Maybe not Patrick Corbin. I like how you really nailed and picked on the Angels and the Rockies, but you left the White Sox off completely as a streaming option. But it's
Everybody's roster is
everybody, and
facing the White Sox this week.
that's the problem. Well, it's a combination of like
There's some good teams facing bad teams this coming week, but it's those teams that their entire pitching staff is rostered. Even Ryan
yeah,
Pipio, I look, he's universally rostered and has a nice 2-step. I thought there would be places where he was dropped and not picked back up yet.
right.
He's rostered everywhere.
Yeah, everybody getting ahead of themselves as well.
Yeah, we have to.
Got to be a week ahead. Sure. All right, great. Lots of volume options there to waterfall yourself into at least one of them, and be happy with what you get based on what funds you still have available. But if you are one of those that, where their ratios are not shot, Kevin, if you are trying to crawl your way back up, or hopefully somebody comes back down to you, so you're just trying to stabilize, add me another name to the list as we continue to consider who can, who will be looking at their weekend usage so that we can take advantage of them for this coming week.
Yeah, absolutely. As great as Jason Adam was in Tampa and has been already in San Diego, I thought, well, Tampa seems to do this quite often. Who's taking Jason Adams' place? And it's Edwin Ucita. He's been amazing, even while Adam was still there. I think we have to go back. He's given up runs in one appearance since July 7th, and he's only given up runs in 2 appearances since May 6th for Tampa. Now he's been up and down a little bit. There's 26 and 2/3, almost 27 innings pitched in that time, 32 strikeouts. So helps there as well. Many of his outings are of the 2-inning variety. We like to see that. His ERA is 1.01 and his WHIP is 0.60 on the season. We're starting to see him more often with the departure of Jason Adam. In fact, I think Tampa this is their new Jason Adam. He's pitching late in
Right.
games, high leverage situations now, and giving us those great ratios. He does not have a win or a save, either one on the year. However, now that he's getting these higher leverage situations, those are still possibilities as well. But his ratios have been amazing all season.
Yeah, Tampa finds a way to just plug somebody else in that role, and they always have somebody backing him up, and that's why they are so always so confident to then trade them away once they hit their peak value at the trade deadline or in the offseason. So, should not have come as a surprise to anybody that you were able to pluck somebody out from that Tampa organization. All right, we're still scraping at saves here. If you've got the flexibility, or is there an obvious name out there that it may be available in your leagues that you should be scooping up for the last 6 weeks of the season?
I think there is an obvious name that's available in almost a quarter of 15-team leagues and over three-quarters of 12-team leagues. If I could tell you that on August 15th, the what appears to be the guy on one of the best teams in baseball has that availability, what would you say? It's Sir Anthony Dominguez. Really looks like he might be running with this ninth inning job in Baltimore. He's got their last two saves. His last two appearances have been those saves. And it really looks to me like this could be the ninth inning guy going forward, regardless, even if he's only going to get part of them. And some of his other appearances are just high leverage earlier in games. He's still an asset to our teams. So Sir Anthony Dominguez, in my mind, is a must add in all formats this week.
I guess the more obvious question then is like is Kimbrel, if you haven't dropped him by now, is he a drop in general, or can he still gain this role back? And does he gain it back enough to be? How many saves does Kimbrel get from here to the end of the season, Kevin?
I would I in my mind, um, I don't think Baltimore trusts him for the postseason, which means we're not gonna see him leading up to the postseason. So maybe 1 or 2 tops.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in
I
those
he's a drop for
situations
me.
where Anthony has pitched 2 days in a row and Cano's not
Yep.
available for whatever reason, assuming Yennier
Perez
Cano
even, I
is the
think they'd
backup
rather have
here.
Perez in there than Kimbrel right now.
Yeah, so there you go. That's more of the question that I'm looking at because I have probably more exposure to Kimbrel than I would probably like at this point. And so probably not next week. Uh, I mean, really across the board. I mean, I haven't personally seen anything of major note. No injuries, no real battles. Nobody really taking the reins over like Sir Anthony Dominguez has in Baltimore. So whatever you need to do to scrimp and scrape. Your Devin Williams is cruising in Milwaukee ever since coming back from the IL. I want to say like you want to go after Calvin Fogger. I mentioned him last week, but he's not pitching either. And Miami's not exactly giving a whole bunch of opportunities to anybody to grab saves there. So yeah, be happy with who you got probably at this point besides the situation in Baltimore. If you are stashing anybody, probably not worth making a move there to switch it up. Kevin, wild card, not many weeks left. It becomes both more fun and less fun as the season goes on, and there's less time to make this decision. But basically, any player that didn't necessarily fit in one of the other categories, or is just a fun name to think about. Who you got here for your wild card?
Well, he doesn't really count as a wild card. He's been back with the major league club for 2 games already, and he's universally rostered at 15s, and he's only available in 15% of 12s, but those 15%, I think should be adding Junior Caminero in Tampa. Uh, The problem is, like, if anybody's gonna play this game we were talking about earlier, where they can still maintain rookie status for next season, if anybody's gonna do that, it would be Tampa. And so he only has 89 at bats to go. So he's probably not gonna get full run at least for 2 to 3 weeks, but I the way he has been playing this season and throughout his minor league career, even if I'm only gonna get him for that last 3 to 4 weeks, September basically. If I'm gonna get him for September, um, I definitely like to have him on my roster. We're getting to that point where there's not a whole lot that I can be certain about. One thing I am certain about is we'll see some guys get called up that we don't expect, and they will perform very well. And they're the ones we have to be ready to jump on as soon as we see them hit the ground running on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday before we make our bids on Sunday night, even if we didn't expect it out of them. We see that every season. Some guys we did not expect to even get called up, and not only do they get the call, they hit the ground running and provide a lot of value in September. I'll try to put some names on that next week, but it's still a little early. It's going to be a week or two before we see them. Like you said, some of the lower level minor league playoffs are going to be starting this next week, and then we'll have AA and AAA towards the end of the month and first week in September. But we're going to start seeing some of these guys.
Yeah, and it'll be fun to see just who gets the cup of coffee. And it's still, because of the rules, rookie eligibility, and all that. We're still seeing those September cup of coffees that we used to always reference. Um, yeah, and of course, Tampa. Oh, the Durham Bulls, their AAA organization. I go back to this as well. They would win their division year in, year out, right? And most of their minor league teams actually did really well for a long period of time. So of course, I wanted to see where the Durham Bulls were going to stand if they had an excuse to send Caminero back down just for their playoffs, and they're right next to the Norfolk Tide. So they may not make their playoffs anyway, so maybe not too much of a concern there either.
Yeah, but I would be. I mean, let me look at the standings real quick. I haven't looked in a day and a half because this is actually intriguing. If it because I don't see Tampa. No, 6.5 back in the wild card with several teams to hop here. Um, yeah, I don't see them allowing Junior Caminero to exceed his rookie eligibility by the end of the season. So I don't think we'll see more than those 89 at bats the rest of the way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a little too far out, and like you said, a lot of things to leap over in order to get there as well, just for
So
that last
Durham
spot.
needs to make the playoffs, so they have a reason to send him down for a couple
Yeah,
weeks.
it's the opposite, right?
Otherwise, we're
Um,
going to be seeing him sitting on the bench quite a bit.
and who wants that? Nobody.
Nobody.
All right. Plenty of names to consider, and I'm sure some other names will pop up on a hot streak over the weekend. So keep an eye on everything we talked about and compare it to what you actually saw. But with all that in mind, Kevin, leave us with any other words of wisdom, final thoughts here as we enter our 21st Fab run of the 2024 season.
I think it's time to prioritize a little bit. You bring this up every year, and like I said earlier, I'm still scratching and clawing in every league I'm in. I'm going to do that, but the leagues where I'm competing, they're getting the most of my attention, and it's a lot. Everything we talk about all season, all the times I say, all the little things add up to a big thing. We can't leave any of them out right now because not only is that helping us, we do know there's some people that are doing exactly the opposite. Football draft season is at its peak for the next couple of weeks. It's nice into summer, kids going back to school. We got Labor Day weekend coming up. People are gonna not maybe not intentionally, maybe just forget now and then. So every little extra thing we do is going to be even more of an advantage now than it has been all season long. So just keep at it.
Keep at keeping yeah, keeping on, whatever that is.
Keep on keeping on.
There it is. All right, great stuff there, and keep in mind everything we have going on here. Check us out on the YouTube, on the Twitter, and all that good stuff. But that is going to wrap it up for episode 177 of On the Wire. You can follow myself on the Twitter at 80 grade. That's all spelled out. Kevin is at Hastings Kevin. Of course, follow the pod itself at On the Wire Pod. After all that, I am Adam Howe on behalf of Kevin Hastings. Thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.